Started with our big focus. Thousands of mourners gathered today in the Iranian city of Tabriz, the largest city in the mountainous northwestern region, where the chopper carrying President Ebrahim Raisi crashed. The bodies of the victims were later taken to the holy Shiite city of Qom, where many of the clerics who make up Iran's theocratic elite are trained before heading to the capital, Tehran. Large ceremonies have been planned in Tehran's enormous Grand Mosalla Mosque for tomorrow. Raisi's body will then be moved to the historic Imam Reza Shrine in Mashhad, his hometown, where Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei will conduct prayers. Investigators are currently looking at how the helicopter carrying the president, the foreign minister and others crashed in a mountainous terrain, even as the other two choppers flying with them landed safely. While so many senior Iranian government officials were traveling in a single decades-old helicopter is one of the many questions being asked. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un offered his condolences, remembering Raisi as a friend. Chinese President Xi Jinping, whose government last year played a role in brokering a landmark rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, hailed Raisi's important contributions to maintaining Iran's security, stability and promoting national development and prosperity. He too referred to the late Iranian president as a friend to the Chinese people. Russian President Vladimir Putin, who the US believes has been receiving support from Iran for his war in Ukraine, called the Iranian leader an outstanding politician and a true friend of Russia. Many observers have pointed to a growing divergence of interest between Iran, China, North Korea and Russia in recent times over their shared animosity towards the global order seen as being dominated by the United States. But Raisi was a highly polarizing figure with a deeply controversial legacy. He brutally quashed a youth-led uprising over repressive laws such as the compulsory hijab. He was known as the Butcher of Tehran for presiding over the executions of thousands of political prisoners for their political and religious beliefs in what came to be known as the 1988 massacre. Raisi, the ultra-conservative cleric, was once seen as a potential successor to his mentor, the current Supreme Leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Raisi's death has left the Islamic Republic's hardline establishment facing an uncertain future as it navigates growing regional tensions and simmering domestic discontent. Iran is currently reeling under a major economic crisis thanks to crippling American sanctions, unrest over quashing of civil liberties and rising tensions with Israel in the Middle East and beyond. For now, power has been transferred to Mohammad Mukhbir, who had served as Raisi's vice president. He's been approved as acting president by the Supreme Leader, the final arbiter of domestic and foreign affairs in the Islamic Republic. Mukhbir is said to be close to the IRGC and the other levers of power. Fresh elections will be held within 50 days and the next Iranian president will be elected on the 28th of June. Many say the elections are likely to be hastily organized with poor voter participation. In March this year, during its parliamentary elections, Iran recorded its lowest electoral turnout since the Islamic Republic's founding in 1979. The election for seats in the parliament, known as the Majlis or the 88-member Assembly of Experts, which was tasked with picking the Supreme Leader, brought in mostly hardline politicians. The more moderate politicians had been barred from running, including former President Hassan Rouhani, tightening the small circle of hardliners to continue the Supreme Leader's conservative rule after he dies. Until the Supreme Leader is replaced, little change is expected, particularly with regard to Iran's foreign policy. It is the Supreme Leader and the Revolutionary Guards who make the final decisions. Therefore, analysts expect to see more continuity than change following Raisi's death. However, what Raisi's death has done is to raise questions about who will eventually succeed Iran's 85-year-old Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the most powerful man in the country. The Iranian clerical establishment had invested heavily in Raisi during his presidency, seeing him as a potential successor to Khamenei. He had been groomed to be elevated to be the supreme leader eventually. Analysts say Raisi's death will create a succession crisis in Iran as far as the supreme leader is concerned. The late president upheld some of the regime's most hardline policies, quashing the 2022 mass protests that sought to challenge repressive laws such as the compulsory hijab. Now, according to the Iranian constitution, the 88-member Assembly of Experts picks the successor to the supreme leader after his death. Members of the assembly itself are pre-vetted by Iran's Guardian Council, a powerful 12-member body charged with overseeing elections and legislation. The Assembly of Experts has become increasingly hardline over the years. In the March vote, Raisi was re-elected to the assembly and the Guardian Council barred his predecessor Rouhani from contesting. While there are procedures for selecting the supreme leader, discussions about successions are always very opaque and take place within a very close circle of individuals. Some say the incumbent supreme leader's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, a mid-level cleric, is a potential contender for the top post, but that would be a shift from the principles of the Islamic Republic, which overthrew a repressive monarchy in 1970 and has prided itself for shaking off hereditary rule. Allowing Mojtaba to replace his father may even spur theories that Raisi's death was not accidental. Though replacing Raisi as the president should be less complicated, as Iran has no dearth of political actors who are subservient and belong to the old guard of the Islamic Republic. The vacuum created by Raisi's death could, however, trigger a power struggle between the hardline factions in Iran over who will replace the aged Ayatollah. Amid concerns about Khamenei's health, the question about his replacement gains more significance. As we said, Iran's supreme leader is the ultimate power center in the country, acting as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The leader appoints the heads of all military branches as well as the head of the judiciary. The occupant of the post also controls Iran's intelligence and security operations and has the power to declare war or peace. The supreme leader has the final say in deciding the policies of the country and dealing with the outside world. The leader also makes several key appointments in the country, including the chief commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Iran has had only two supreme leaders since the birth of the Islamic Republic. After Khomeini died in 1989, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei took over the high-profile post. He has maintained a tight grip on Iran's politics and foreign affairs, taken a hardline stance against the West, especially the United States, and often even called for the elimination of the State of Israel. Iran's constitution states that the supreme leader has to be an Ayatollah, that means a senior Shia religious figure. Ayatollah Khamenei is believed to be against his son Mojtaba's candidature, as he does not want to promote hereditary leadership. And his objection to hereditary rule would also eliminate the candidacy of the grandson of the Islamic Republic's founder Ali Khomeini, who is currently in Najaf in Iraq. The other name doing the rounds is Alreza Arafi, who is currently vying for the role of the chairman of the Assembly of Experts, which will appoint the new supreme leader after Khamenei's death. But experts say after Khamenei has indicated that he preferred somebody else, the only name in the someone else category actually till Sunday was Raisi. Now there is no name in that category. Some believe prominent actors like Revolutionary Guards and influential clerics and Qom, an important center for religious studies, are now likely to ramp up efforts to shape the process by which the next supreme leader is picked. The question we're asking on Global Lens tonight is this: does Ebrahim Raisi's death complicate the Iranian supreme leader's succession?
Debris and mangled metal can be seen wedged between trees at a site said to be the wreckage of Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi's helicopter on Monday. The footage from a Turkish broadcaster showed parts of the destroyed aircraft in a misty forested area. Officials in state media on Monday said Raisi, a hardliner seen as a potential successor to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed along with 6 others aboard the helicopter after it crashed in poor weather in mountains near the Azerbaijan border. Supreme Leader Khamenei, who holds ultimate power with a final say on foreign policy and Iran's nuclear program, announced 5 days of public mourning and said First Vice President Mohammad Makbar would take over as interim president. In the first cabinet meeting after the crash, the acting leader vowed the incident would not interrupt the government's operations.
This is a serious incident for all of us. It is sad and upsetting, but in the interests of the country and our people, we won't have any disruption. The country will continue moving forward under this leadership. Everyone should continue on with their roles despite this incident. In no way will this tragic incident interfere with the government and the running of our country.
The crash comes at a time of growing dissent within Iran over an array of political, social, and economic crises. Iran's clerical rulers face international pressure over Tehran's disputed nuclear program and its deepening military ties with Russia during the war in Ukraine. Iranians in exile in Berlin celebrated the president's death, while the head of a Paris-based Iranian opposition group told Reuters that Raisi's death represents an enormous and serious strategic blow to the mullah's supreme leader Ali Khamenei and the entire regime. The United Nations held a moment of silence for Raisi Monday, while leaders around the globe expressed their condolences, including Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, who said earlier it sent rescue teams to assist, while even the U.S. offered to help after receiving a request from Iran, according to State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller.
I'm not going to get into the details, but we were asked by the Iranian government for assistance. We said that we would be willing to assist. It's something that we would do with respect to any government in this situation. Ultimately, largely for logistical reasons, we weren't able to provide that assistance.
The U.S. government offered condolences to the Iranian people, though a White House spokesperson said Raisi had blood on his hands for supporting extremist groups in the region. An Israeli official who requested anonymity told Reuters it was not involved in the crash, while the U.S. said it played no role either.
All right, so what happens next in Iran? Let's put that question to our panel of experts. Joining me on Global Lens tonight, Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, former Indian diplomat, Major General Ashwini Sivaj, defense and geopolitical expert, Dr. Sanjay Bharadwaj, professor at the School of International Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, and in a moment, we will be joined by Pramit Pal Chaudhary, foreign affairs expert at the Eurasia Group. A warm welcome to all my guests. Ambassador Sajjanhar, let me begin with you. You know, we know now that the first vice president has taken over as the interim president of Iran. The next president of Iran will be elected within 50 days. In fact, the election is scheduled to be held on the 28th of June. Most experts believe that while electing the next president of Iran will not be all that difficult, given that there are multiple players who are close enough to the clerical regime of Iran. The bigger question is, has Raisi's shock death complicated the Iranian supreme leader's succession? What is your take on that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Neha. I tend to agree with that assessment that definitely it has complicated the issue, because even earlier, it was not very clear, because I don't think anyone in Iran would be talking about that, because supreme leader, and if you are talking about, what happens after him, it's not the right thing to do. And I know that when I served in Iran many decades ago, at that time, it was just after the revolution in 1979. Khomeini was still there, and Khamenei was really his understudy. So no one really was talking about, although Khomeini was also an old person at that time, but no one was really talking as to what happens after him. But then it's a very opaque thing, but still, under the present circumstances, people were talking that it is, Raisi is a protege of, was a protege of Sayyid Ali Khamenei, and so, he could be, and he has the confidence, he enjoys the confidence of the supreme leader. So he would fill this slot, he could, there was a good likelihood, there was a good possibility that he would step into the shoes of Sayyid Ali Khamenei, who is, 84, 85 years and getting along in years. So there was this possibility, although, it was not spoken out in so many words. But now that he has also moved out of the reckoning, so it definitely does complicate matters. But, of course, first thing is the elections for the president, that is on the 28th of next month. And that also, as you mentioned, it will be a hurried affair. And I wonder whether, Mohammad Mukhbar, who has taken over as the acting president, he starts with an advantage because he was the handpicked individual, handpicked person by Raisi himself. So he obviously enjoyed the confidence of Raisi, and he would have also enjoyed the confidence of the supreme leader. But of course, nothing much is really known about him. He's more of a technocrat than, being an ulema, than being a religious leader. So maybe he can fit the role of the president, although I have seen, meaning even Ahmadinejad before Rouhani was also not, in the classical mold of an ayatollah or, of a religious leader, spiritual leader. But he was also the president for 2 terms. So maybe Mohammad Mukhbar could, go with an advantage going forward for the election to the president. But of course, the field for the replacement of the supreme leader is wide open. Neha.
It is wide open indeed. Could his son take over? But then that goes against the rules or the principles that have been followed by the Islamic Republic of rejecting hereditary rule. So what happens next?
Although, could I make one comment here on this particular aspect?
Sir, I promise to come back to you on this issue, but after a quick break.
The game of power politics has begun. The bugle has been sounded. Who will receive the death blow? Who will be checkmated? It still remains to be seen.
ये दिखाता है हर कार्यकर्ता का बुलंद हौसला।
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
For the very first time in our investigation, we unmasked the killer of Ravindra Matre.
In 5G, we have to stand with the world, and in 6G, we have to lead the world.
Winning a Grammy was an absolutely surreal experience.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News 9 Live with me, Neha Khan. Now, while I need to go across to our other guests, but Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar wanted to come in towards the end of the last segment, so I will begin this segment with him. Ambassador Sajjanar, the question that I raised before that break is this. Iran has for a long time followed the principle of rejecting hereditary rule. And if that is the case, then doesn't that pretty much eliminate the current supreme leader's son, Mujtaba, his candidature from the race, and if that principle is adhered to even now with Raisi gone and out of the picture, experts say that it also eliminates the candidacy of the grandson of Iran's founder Ali Khomeini. And therefore the question is it going to be very difficult for Iran to find a suitable candidate to replace the current supreme leader? And I guess the reason why it is important to talk about it now is because, as you mentioned, the current supreme leader is 85 years old and there have been concerns about his health.
Yeah, very well. Thank you very much, Neha, for coming back to me. I know you have other guests, so I'll be very brief. I'll make two brief points. One is that as far as the Shiites are concerned, it is not unknown. In fact, it is a practice to have hereditary rule, having the descendants. Meaning my knowledge and information about Shia and Sunni Islam is not all that good, but what I know is that the schism between the Shias and the Sunnis took place because the Shias wanted the follower, the first Caliph and the Imam after Prophet Muhammad, to be his descendant, to be his direct descendant, to be of his bloodline. And that is why they wanted Imam Ali to be the first Imam and Caliph. And after Ali, who was both the son-in-law and also, I think, nephew of Prophet Muhammad, or a cousin of Prophet Muhammad. So he was the first Imam and Caliph, and after him, the sons, Hossein and Hassan, they became the Imam. So the point I'm trying to make here is that it is, as far as the Shias are concerned, they want their descendants straight from the Prophet. The second point, what you mentioned, is that if you, Qom is a place of where spiritual spiritual individuals, all, whether it is Rafsanjani or it is Muntazeri or it is Raisi, every one of them, or Rouhani, all of them have got their training from Qom. And it is still the center of religious learning, religious teaching. So getting a person, meaning now after all the Islamic Republic has been in possession for 45 years. So, they have a large number of religious leaders. So getting a religious leaders with the proper suitable credentials, both in religious learning as well as in terms of knowledge of, that they are on the right side of the politics, whether it is on nuclear policy, whether it is on relations with the United States or Israel, the adversarial relations. I don't think that might be all that difficult to find. Thank you, Neha.
All right. So somebody clearly is optimistic about the succession, even though many others say that this could get complicated in the times ahead. I need to take another quick break here on Global Lens. Don't go anywhere. We will continue this conversation with our other guests.
Forever, there are simultaneous election of parliament, assembly, and municipality and panchayat. So that framework has to be given in the constitution. That amendment has been suggested.
Are you going to take away the power of dissolution?
I mean, it doesn't require any rocket science to do this. It's a simple constitutional amendment, and the idea is everything goes together.
The Law Commission has set the ball rolling for one nation, one election. Basically, if all goes well, then India may see simultaneous elections to Lok Sabha, state assemblies, municipalities and panchayats in 2029.
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए, और कमाना है तो खरीदिए। जानकारी, सलाह और निवेश सब एक ही सुपर ऐप पर। पैसे का सवाल है तो जवाब है मनी 9। आजादी पैसे की, अभी डाउनलोड करें।
America, there is an inheritance tax. In India, you don't have that.
कांग्रेस की लूट जिंदगी के साथ भी और जिंदगी के बाद भी।
Our manifesto combines ideology with effective administration, with delivery that is long overdue.
Rahul Gandhi is talking about redistribution of wealth. These are the things people are alert to. They want to know, what does Congress say when you say redistribute wealth?
I was ready to be a CEO at 26.
Only the guys with the strongest heads can handle hard situations.
There is a blurring line between arrogance and confidence.
This is the philosophy of FC Bayern Munich.
World premiere on 25th of May, only on News 9 Live at 9 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News 9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. Let's now go across to Dr. Sanjay Bharadwaj. Dr. Bharadwaj, as we were discussing earlier, the supreme leader of Iran is the ultimate power center in that country and the final arbiter in all matters, domestic and external. Do you believe that Raisi's death could trigger a power struggle between the hardline factions in Iran over who should replace the aged Ayatollah?
See, I would like to make two submissions. Number one, that there are two, in fact, there are two elections are due in a way. The way the Khomeini is very old, he's 83 years old.
85.
So definitely they are looking 85. They are looking forward to have a supreme leader in Iran. The second, the immediate question is to elect the president, and who will be the best candidate for the election for the Iranian president. Of course, that the president, vice president has become and appointed as the Mokbar has been appointed as the president, interim president till 28th June after the elections. Maybe he can be what I predict that he can be a very strong candidate in a way, because all the policies what Raisi has had been taking either about the nuclear expansion or supporting to Hamas or Hezbollah or IS or Houthi and all that, creating alternative Islamic discourse in Middle East. These were all supported by the Vice President Makram while Raisi was the president, and was endorsed by the Supreme Leader Khomeini. So I can predict that he can be the strongest contender right now. But I do find that there are very strong internal challenges within Iran, and of course there are also external issues and pressures on Iran that have been in the past few years, I can say. One internal, I can say that the way there are also protests from the progressive and liberal supporters in Iran, and they were not supporting to the Raisi's policies or Khomeini's policies being hardliners and suppressing their voice. That has been tackled very hardly, very strongly by Raisi and was not appreciated by the international communities. The way they got, and you can see the protests are taking place in like in London in front of Iranian embassy there. So you can see that there are strong threat and support to that a hardliner should not become the president of Iran. The second point, like Rouhani was little bit pragmatic and progressive leader. So Rouhani was a better choice in a way because Rouhani also had a nuclear deal with the USA and wanted to not go for that much of expansion. But this was not liked. I think this was not liked by the supreme leader. And then Raisi was elected in 2021, and Raisi had started expanding its nuclear programs and giving an alternative discourse in Iranian world. So you can see that international community, of course, they were looking forward to have a moderate, pragmatic leaders in Iran. But what is most important point again, that the emerging scenario that has been taken place, particularly in Middle East after Israel-Hamas conflict, and then this conflict has been converted and tried to convert in between the West and versus the Islamic world, and then Iran has emerged as the strong leader in the Middle East. That kind of polarization and was supported and is supported by the other worlds that who wants to change the world order, like China, like Russia, like the North Koreans, and Iran has been getting all kinds of strategic as well as military and political support during these conflicts, and that Iran also reciprocated to Russia. So my point is there that these conflicting situations in Iran will definitely complicate the elections of the president. Though I'm also looking forward, correctly, Ambassador Sajjanar has talked about that hereditary, because the Iranian revolution was the hereditary king, in fact. And if Khomeini's son will replace as the supreme leader or become the president, then definitely it would be a great challenge to the Iranian or theocratic states that they try to establish. So these are all issues, and then how these issues will be dealt very, very, very carefully by the supreme leader is again a point to see. But of course, Iran is very close to its nuclear expansion program. Iran is very close to have an alternative discourse in the, and Iran also looking forward to make friends. Like India was a very close, very good friends. We have signed Chabar agreements. We are also having all kinds of oil and energy corporations between
so we are likely to see continuity of policy to a very large extent, both domestically and externally. But who becomes the next president is of course a significant question, but a much bigger question is who ultimately replaces the supreme leader, because the current supreme leader has so far completely eschewed hereditary leadership. And if he says that must continue, could that make finding his replacement quite difficult for Iran? Let me now go across to Major General Ashwini Sivaj. General Sivaj, Raisi's sudden death has given rise to so many questions. What happens next internally in Iran? Of course, there's going to be a new president who's going to be elected on the 28th of June. And then the question that many are asking is, who is going to replace the supreme leader, who is already 85 years old? Because in Iran, for the longest time, the only name that seemed to be doing the rounds was that of Ebrahim Raisi, the man who many believed would ultimately replace his mentor. With him gone, do you believe there could be a power struggle? What kind of changes do you believe Raisi's death could trigger for Iran domestically? And do you believe it could have any significant impact on foreign policy, or more or less there's likely to be continuity?
Yeah, Neha, first of all, I don't think there is going to be any change as far as foreign policy is concerned. It is not the president which called the shot. It is basically the shot is called by Ayatollah Al-Khamenei, who is the supreme leader. And therefore, there is not going to be any change. But yes, the million-dollar question is who's going to be a new president? And because Ayatollah Al-Khamenei is very old, he's 85 years old, and the succession line was that Ebrahim Raisi was to take over, and he was groomed. Now that thing is gone. So who will be the next president is very important, because possibly the whosoever is selected as the next president, he may replace Ayatollah Al-Khamenei. So this question now make it that the door is open for all the contestants. But the question comes is Ebrahim Raisi been killed, or is it a natural accident which has taken place? That will also dictate. Because there are a number of questions being raised as to how the death has occurred when there were 3 helicopter and foreign minister and president traveling in the same. If the weather was bad, they could have taken a detour. When the other 2 aircraft or helicopter could reach the destination, why this helicopter has met with an accident? So there are a number of questions which are being raised. Is it a discontentment within Iran has taken place? Because that question is also there, that he was becoming very unpopular. Economically, Iran was not doing well. And also the way he has handled the hijab, anti-hijab movement, which was also not being liked by the common people there. And third thing is the currency was going down compared to a dollar. So all sort of questions are coming, whether Ebrahim Raisi death was a natural death of an accident which has taken place due to bad weather, or mechanical or technical failure, or by basically pilot error, or is it due to a sabotage which has taken place, whether by external agency like Mossad, or by internal discontentment which was also rising. So all these questions will make a difference. But to me, it looks like that as far as the present, the policy which is there, it is imprint of Ayatollah Al-Khamenei. He is the supreme leader, and he called the last shot. And the president is just an interface between public and the supreme leader. But the question comes now is, who is going to be the new president? Will it be the son of present supreme leader, or the grandson of the first supreme leader? That question is very open, or the Mohammed
somebody else. Because if the supreme leader decides that nobody from his family or the family of the founder of the country should replace him, then that complicates matters further. So far, like I've been saying, the Islamic Republic of Iran has eschewed hereditary leadership. The ambassador Sajjanar seems to think that could change.
Absolutely, I can say with certainty things can change, because remember that today Iran is in crossroad. One is that Iran wants to become nuclear, and he is a one step only to become a nuclear. Any day they can declare that they have tested a nuclear weapon, and this is going to be a game changer. And therefore, Ayatollah Al-Khamenei wants a strong leader who understands him well to become a president. And therefore, the question of his son or the grandson of a first supreme leader is there, and they are in contest. Now remember, as far as this war which is going of Israel and Hamas, this war is not still over, and this complicates the whole issue, because Iran is the biggest player in this, because all these proxies of Hezbollah, Hamas and Houthi rebel are being orchestrated by Iran, and Iran getting involved in this, the conflict, the chances are always there. So therefore the things are not going very fine for Iran. Iran is on the crossroad, and to me it looks like that Ayatollah Al-Khamenei is the last word in Iran. He was there.
He is the last word. Nobody denies that. He is the ultimate power center in that country. The only reason why people are talking about his succession is because he is 85 years old, and there has been concern about his health. Who replaces him with Ebrahim Raisi gone now is the million-dollar question. You believe his son and the grandson of the founder of Iran should not be ruled out of the race.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting, you talked about this, and you also talked earlier about an investigation is currently underway to determine whether the crash was an accident or caused by sabotage. These are all very important aspects of this evolving story, because many observers point out that if the current supreme leader's son is in fact made the president, for instance, or even promoted to be the next supreme leader, then conspiracy theorists might say, well, Raisi's death wasn't an accident. But you know, the conspiracy theories will, of course, continue. And very difficult to say if we'll ever know the complete truth about that crash. But let me go back to Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar at this point. Ambassador Sajjanhar, there is no doubt that questions are being asked. There were 3 helicopters that were flying. 2 of them made a safe landing in the same inclement weather conditions, in the same mountainous terrain. But this one helicopter crashes, and this helicopter, which many have also questioned as being extremely outdated, was carrying the President of Iran, the Foreign Minister of Iran, and several other senior officials. Why was that done in the first place is one of the many questions. The other question I want to ask you is, are you surprised that the Iranian government hasn't already jumped to the conclusion that Israel was behind the crash? They haven't named anyone at all. It's only the Iranian state media which said on day one that it was an accident. There is still no word from the Iranian government on what exactly happened.
Yeah, no, you're very right, Neha. You know, they have not jumped to conclusions. I think they are conducting themselves rather responsibly, which they have not been known for, you know, since the Iranian Revolution took place. They sort of, you know, come with all guns blazing, as we have seen on any of these issues, you know, whether there is the assessment is justified or not. So I think they need to be commended that this is a responsible attitude to take, because I think one of the reasons is that, you know, they fired whatever 320 missiles, cruise missiles, drones, rockets, etc. at Israel after their consulate was bombed on the 1st of April. So they had gone ahead with that and did that on the 13th. Now, if there is an incident of this nature which has been you know, undertaken by Israel, by Mossad, or by any of the other adversaries, then of course, in terms of the response that they have to give, has to be huge. Absolutely, they have to go to war with that you know, country, because there cannot be any shortcuts to that. And I think they also realize that if they make allegations of that nature and they don't take any action, then they will be seen to be a very weak power who's not able to sort of, you know, even protect its head of state, who's not able to sort of, you know, take adequate cognizance and respond in equal measure if its head of state is attacked and killed like this. So I think in that sense, they have thought through this whole thing, because otherwise, you know, the consequences would be disastrous, and disastrous not only for the other country, not only for the region, but for Iran itself. And Iran knows it very well. You know, you have identified all the problems that Iran is going through. It knows very well that it is not in a position to engage in, I'm sorry, outright conflict with either Israel or with any of the other Western powers. So I think in that sense, it has taken this in a very mature manner. But your first question as to, you know, that there would be this conspiracy theory that, you know, if the Supreme Leader's Ali Khamenei's son were to take over as the president or as the future leader, that there would be fingers that would be pointed. You know, I think conspiracy theorists will come out with anything and everything. Let the investigation go, let the final the result be available, be made clear, and I think then only you know, some inferences can be drawn from this.
You're quite right. Nobody is in a position to jump to any conclusions right now. An investigation is underway. Of course, there are those who will continue to ask whether we will ever get to know the complete truth. But clearly, this is a critical moment for Iran. On that note, Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, Major General Ashwini Sewak, Dr. Sanjay Bharadwaj, thank you so much for your time and perspective. Thanks for joining us on Global Lens. All right, let's now turn our attention to the Israel-Hamas war. France, Belgium and Slovenia have released statements supporting the world's top war crimes court and its chief prosecutor's request for arrest warrants for leaders of Israel and Hamas after Israel and the United States both harshly condemned the effort. The International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, has accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and 3 Hamas leaders, Yahya Sinwar, Mohammad Deif and Ismail Haniyeh, of war crimes and crimes against humanity in the Gaza Strip. While Netanyahu and Gallant do not face imminent arrest, the announcement is a symbolic blow that has deepened Israel's isolation over the war in Gaza. Israel launched its offensive after Hamas's 7th October attack in which terrorists stormed into southern Israel, killed about 1,200 people, mostly civilians, and took about 250 people hostage. At least 35,000 Palestinians have died in the war so far, according to Gaza's health ministry. Around 80% of the population of 2.3 million Palestinians has been displaced within the territory, often multiple times. Benjamin Netanyahu responded with fury to the news that he might face an arrest warrant for war crimes and crimes against humanity. It was a moral outrage of historic proportions, he said, adding that Israel was waging a just war against Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization that perpetrated the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. In a bitter personal attack, Netanyahu said Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor of the ICC, was one of the great anti-Semites in modern times. He alleged Khan was just like the judges in Nazi Germany who denied Jews basic rights and enabled the Holocaust. His decision to seek arrest warrants against Israel's Prime Minister and Defense Minister was callously pouring gasoline on the fires of anti-Semitism that are raging around the world, thundered Netanyahu. His close ally, US President Joe Biden, said it was outrageous to apply for arrest warrants and that there was no equivalence, none whatsoever, between Israel and Hamas.
US President Joe Biden strongly defended Israel on Monday after the International Criminal Court's prosecutor requested arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense chief and 3 Hamas leaders over alleged war crimes. Biden was speaking at an event for Jewish American Heritage Month at the White House.
Let me be clear. We reject the ICC's application for arrest warrants against Israeli leaders. Whatever these warrants may imply, there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. And it's clear Israel wants to do all it can to ensure civilian protection. But let me be clear. Contrary to allegations against Israel made by the International Court of Justice, what's happening is not genocide.
ICC prosecutor Karim Khan said in a statement issued after more than 7 months of war in Gaza that he had reasonable grounds to believe the 5 men, quote, bear criminal responsibility for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. He said evidence his office collected showed Israel had systematically deprived civilians of, quote, objects indispensable to human survival, including food, water, medicine, and energy. Netanyahu on Monday called the charges absurd.
As the Prime Minister of Israel, I reject with disgust the comparison of the prosecutor in The Hague between democratic Israel and the mass murderers of Hamas. This is a complete distortion of reality.
The Hamas leaders are accused of bearing responsibility for crimes committed by the militant group, including extermination and murder, the taking of hostages, torture, rape, and other acts of sexual violence. Many Gazans were also angry over news of the warrants.
We are against this decision because they have equated the victim with the executioner. We have a right to our homeland. How can it be that those who resist and call for the liberation of their homeland become criminal, and the criminal becomes the protector?
The ICC is the world's first permanent international war crimes court. It steps in only when a state is unwilling or genuinely unable to do so itself. Israel has said alleged war crimes in Gaza are being investigated domestically. It and key ally the United States are not members of the ICC, along with China and Russia.
Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of Global Lens. Thanks so much for watching. We're leaving you with more stories that made global headlines today.
President